Thank you for taking the time to view the Safe Boundaries curriculum. By the end of this presentation, you will see what we all have in common as providers meeting the needs of people with intellectual disabilities. No matter where we are, our needs are very similar. People with intellectual disabilities have needs that require acknowledgement. They are telling us what they need and want through all forms of communication. Some of these wants needing acknowledgement include employment, so they are viable members of their community; independence, to live in their community as an equal; the desire to have quality relationships in all forms, from family, work, social, and personal intimacy. Safe Boundaries covers all these topics and so much more. So where does the elephant in the middle of the room come from? Basically, any issue that is not being taken seriously, minimized, or ignored is an elephant in the middle of the room. We walk around it, pretending it isn't there, when it is actually constantly growing the more it is not acknowledged. We are only sweeping issues under the rug, but they become the elephant in the room under the rug. That's pretty intense. There are many issues or elephants we address on a daily basis with people with intellectual disabilities. Whether we are caring for people from infancy to aged, the human body is always developing and changing. Questions arise at all stages of life. During adolescence, the human body goes through many physical and hormonal changes. There are natural physical responses that a person with intellectual disabilities may not understand. People with intellectual disabilities may have a disadvantage in understanding these changes, leading to confusion or assuming the negative. Safe Boundaries talks about facts of life in an honest, easy way to understand and comprehend. Many people with intellectual disabilities do not have the opportunities of discovering and experiencing relationships through a typical dating process. This can lead to misunderstanding relationships and misinterpreting subtle social cues. For example, walking with someone as an attendant in a wedding does not mean you are in a relationship with that person. Safe Boundaries discusses the process of relationships, from getting to know a person, to dating, having a long-term committed relationship, to intimacy. All that has been mentioned increases the vulnerability of an individual with intellectual disabilities. The Safe Boundaries curriculum teaches in a way that is informative and hands-on. Increased knowledge helps the person make sound choices, allowing them to a greater sense of security from maltreatment. Staff or family working with people with intellectual disabilities never know when they are going to be asked an unexpected question regarding human development or sexuality. Safe Boundaries offers a universal approach in language, making conversation a natural experience. There are many reasons why people with intellectual disabilities need social and sexual education. Without getting honest answers to honest questions, they may develop their own false set of facts. They may lack the vocabulary to ask questions or even to report abuse. As stated before, they may misinterpret subtle social cues. Like many of us, they may have an atypical way of learning. They have a right to know as much about themselves and their loved ones. They have limited relationship opportunities, which is why it's important to focus on maintaining healthy relationships. They are vulnerable to abuse and exploitation. They may be looked at as an eternal child. They live in a fishbowl. Each behavior is monitored and documented. And they may be labeled as a sexual deviant. When the truth of the matter is, the behavior may be appropriate, it's just at the inappropriate time, with the inappropriate person, or at the inappropriate place. The biggest thing to remember is that a disability does not take away sexuality. It is a part of a person, with intellectual disabilities or not, as a whole. Other than the obvious, the following are real-life situations which motivated Community Options and Resources to act and find resolutions to serious situations. These examples led to the writing and publishing of the Safe Boundaries curriculum. There was a young gentleman who lived in his own apartment in the community. After finding his funds missing, we began asking questions. We came to find out he had made friends with a female in the community, and upon further investigation we learned that she was expecting and had him convinced that he was the father of the unborn child. And because he was the father, he needed to give her money to support the child. When asking him, "Could you be the father?" he stated, "Yes." I held her hand. As you can see, he was lacking the education to understand how to conceive a child. Another situation we came across was a young woman who lived in a group home with 3 other housemates. All she wanted was some alone time with her boyfriend. Because there were different levels of vulnerability between her and her boyfriend, the team met and decided we would start with some guidelines. The guidelines included 20 minutes of alone time in her bedroom, but in the very beginning, staff could check on them periodically. The first day came with the new time alone guidelines in place. Staff was walking past the room and noticed they had left the door open. Upon peeking into the room, she noticed that after only 5 minutes, they were already half undressed. They were taking full advantage of that alone time. Not sure on what to do, we decided to call her case manager. There were a few things we needed to consider, including if maltreatment was happening, but also remembering the individual's rights, looking at the individual support plan and the positive support plan. The case manager simply asked, "Well, what does your policy say?" The truth was, we didn't have one. We decided to create our own human development and sexuality policy, putting everything Community Options and Resources believed in. However, after the policy was written, we did not want it to be another policy that was written, placed in a book, and stuck up on a shelf somewhere. We wanted to ensure it would be a living policy. In order to ensure it would remain a living policy, Safe Boundaries was created. After the curriculum was developed, but before we could start classes with the individuals, we had some fears to address. Some of the parents expressed very legitimate fears. Some of them included the fear their child would become more likely to experiment once receiving sexual knowledge. Or what happens if there's an unplanned pregnancy? I don't want to raise another child. Some parents also had concerns because it's difficult to look at your child as a sexual being. Some believe there was no need for education because they will remain childlike and therefore non-sexual. Or some may have had an underlying hope that if their child doesn't know about sex, they will never have the desire to express their sexuality. Staff also voiced concerns. We heard a variety of statements such as, "Are we sure we want to open that can of worms?" "What if they start asking questions?" All the way up to, "So what? We just shut the door and let them go at it?" In order to calm fears, we held educational nights for staff, parents, guardians, and case managers to attend and learn about the Safe Boundaries program and the curriculum. The DSP position is a rewarding yet challenging role to fulfill. Challenges can be found related to sexuality. We were able to calm some of the staff fear by explaining that educating an individual is not giving them permission to have sex. Also assuring staff their voice was heard and to know their rights as a staff. If an individual is making inappropriate advances towards a staff, the staff has the right to discuss with the individual that it is inappropriate, and you have a working relationship and not a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. By providing formal training to the direct support professionals, it allowed for a better understanding of the policy and expectations when working with the individuals. Staff are constantly teaching individuals by role modeling. We educate about the facts of the world we live in. Our world is very colorful and involves sensitive issues, such as homosexuality, masturbation, and genders and gender changes. Also understanding the need to separate standards, morals, and values so our values do not become the individual's values is very important. One tool we use that allows the direct support professional to handle a challenging situation is to think CORE. Control your response, open your mind, respond with accurate and appropriate information. An example of using CORE is when a staff person was very pregnant. An individual asked her, "When is it okay to have a baby?" It was a very legitimate and simple question, but the staff person had to really think before answering this. Some may have wanted to start by saying, "When you get married and fall in love and not quite know when to finish." The fact is, you do not have to be married to have a child. You do not have to be in love to conceive a child. Instead, the staff person responded with the appropriate facts. The healthiest time for a woman to carry a baby is in her mid to late 20s. And that was it. She didn't say a word more, and the individual was very pleased with that answer, and that's all she really wanted to know. When identifying people in need, we looked for social maturity and readiness. Were they growing and maturing socially, and did they want to become more involved? Individuals with disabilities are vulnerable to maltreatment. Many individuals are active members in their community, and more are living independently, which can increase their vulnerability. They can be faced with peer pressure to use drugs, be manipulated, and are being held accountable for their actions. It is important they understand and respect the rights and boundaries of others. Instructors need to get to know each individual attending. To better understand an individual's current knowledge of subject matter, learning style, and what they wish to learn, an assessment is completed. The assessment allows us to tailor the classroom subject matter to the individual. In order to encourage active participation, we use punch cards as a fun incentive tool. This is not only for the students, but for the staff as well. After all, who doesn't like to get a little reward? In the classroom, once a student or staff has a full punch card, they get a little reward by making a trip to the treasure chest to pick a fun prize. Through the Safe Boundaries curriculum, activities, and interactions, we focus on maintaining good self-esteem. The way we feel about ourselves is reflected in every aspect of our daily lives. We introduce and reiterate at every class ways to maintain our self-esteem. We like to think of self-esteem like ice cream. If you don't keep working at it, it melts. To reinforce our self-esteem, we use an exercise at every class called the Walk of Confidence. We look ourselves in the mirror and give a positive affirmation, which sounds like a simple task, but is harder than you would think. Like this picture, do we see a great big lion when we look in the mirror? In order to maintain good self-esteem, one should say at least 8 positive affirmations per day. For example, I am a good person. So now I ask you, How do you see yourself? People with intellectual disabilities can be up against more challenges than the average person and are in need of all the positive affirmations they can get. We can assist them in stating positive affirmations to themselves. However, we need to role model this as well. When was the last time you told yourself a positive affirmation? Thank you for taking the time to view the origin and history of the Safe Boundaries curriculum. It is our hope you have found some similarities within your organization showing the need for safe boundaries in your services.